This is Gino of Wall Street I.O. We do this every morning. Today is Thursday, July 30th. Welcome, everybody. Brand new people, let me know who you are because we have a lot to go over. I'm going to tell you the pros and cons of Heikin Ashi versus regular candles. It's harder to read because you have what's called an open. And let me find a big candle. Here's an open right here, right there where the flat green is. The high is the top of the wick up here. The low is the bottom of the wick. And the close is right there because it's green. So it's green. We know it opened here and closed here. If it's red, we know it opened here, right where my hand is. And then it closed here. Green, we know it opened here and closed there. But see, the wick marks the high and low. And what's interesting about this is this. When did it go to the high and when did it go to the low? Meaning, did it open here? Let me do a little drawing. Did this candle open here? Then did it trade throughout the day down here and then go up and close here? Or did it open here, go all the way up, then down and close here? So all that action, we don't know. So really, it's just telling you the open, high, and low is more volatile. Meaning, this is where it opened, that's where it closed, but it actually got higher during the day and lower. Now, here we opened high, went lower, and right there. And we can read that because it opened higher, went lower. So that's regular candles. Like this one here, we can see how wide it was. All this width from here to here. And let me just show you. All this width from here to here is how the range, the total range. But the actual open is here. And the close is here. Okay. So do you use the wicks or do you use the body? And it depends. It depends. Because sometimes there's a little bit of trading out here. Sometimes there's a lot of trading out there. It's all that you don't know. So when in doubt, use the wicks. But I like to level it off. So when I'm looking at resistance, and this is a common question I get all the time. When you're drawing resistance, do you use the wicks? Do you use the wicks? Or do you use the bodies? Now, if you go to a line chart, and now the bar chart is your open, high, low, close. See this? This is your open on the left. This is your high. This is your low. And that's the close, that little bar on the right. So the candles, basically, all they do on regular candles is they just color this part in right here. See that? They just color in the open to the current price right there. And that's where you get, see that? That's all they do. So the candles are just letting you know, hey, it opened here and closed here, which just show you that. It's easier to read the OHLC, the open, high, low. It's just easier to read this. The candles make it easier to read. So that's how I learned, is on these kind of things. And actually, when I first started learning, this is what our chart looked like. A line. It was a line. And imagine how confusing that is with your moving averages. Right? And then they had this thing called Mountain for a while. Some softwares had this. That was your graph. So we have this for people that want it. And then we have hollow candles. So your green are hollow and your red stand out. There's a lot of different systems, right? Then you have volume candles. The fatter the candle, the more volume. There's a lot of them. So Micah went through here and he started looking at these and he saw this one right here called Heikin Ashi. And you should have a star next to Heikin Ashi and you should have one next to candle. Why? Because here's regular candle. Here's Heikin Ashi. And then when Micah saw this, he said, And I'm guessing because he told me the story many times. He told me the story back in like 2010. What is this? Because this doesn't look like this. So, for example, when you're looking here, you go, hey, that's a doji. And that's a doji. But let's look at this doji here on the Heikin Ashi so we understand it. Here's the high. Here's the low. How is that different from regular candles? Nothing. But why is this a doji? And why does this not look like a doji? Because what Heikin Ashi does, if you look it up, it means averaging the bar, average of the bar. And it's interpreted different ways, but it's the average bar. What it's saying is, if you look at this bar over here, the previous day, so here's the candle yesterday. See the high and low? If you look at the candle from yesterday, it goes to the average price, the middle of the body there, right? It goes to the middle. And it says, this is the average price from yesterday. And that's where it always opens, is the average price from yesterday. Then it looks at today's high and low. Today's high and low, and says, what's the average price today? So based on today's average price against yesterday's average price, that's where this line is right here. See that? So if you take today's average price versus where we opened, you're actually getting what's called a doji. So it's calculated difference. And the first thing, the most important thing, there's a few things you need to know about this, is this. This price on Heikin Ashi is not the current price of the stock. You see how it says 105.80? What's the actual price? It's 105.34. That's a 50-cent difference because we're looking at supply and demand, not just the price of the stock. So if you try to trigger, I'm going to trigger at, let's say I put a trigger, I want to trigger if it's less than, let's say, here, guess what? You're already triggered. Why? Because the stock is already past that. See that? So if I put my trigger, and this answers a lot of questions we get in customer service. Why am I getting triggered right when I place my alert there? Because I'm putting it below the price of the stock, right? Here's the price of the stock, 105.8. Well, if that's my trigger, guess what? The actual price is right here. So remember that you have to look at regular candles to get the true price of what it's trading at today. Does everybody get that? Because it's showing you the average. So why is it better to show the average, or why does it do that? Because if your average is growing, the price average is growing, it'll stay greener longer. The candles are always going to stay green if the average price goes up. They're not going to go red until the average price actually dips lower than the previous days. So the two candles have to average lower than yesterday's price and be below. So yesterday's average price is where we opened. That's our yes. So today's average price has to be below that. So it basically, it's like you need two average prices to be lower, not just one. So it stays greener longer. Now, the next thing is this, you're going to notice. And this was hard for me because when I'm looking at regular candles, you see I get these candles. There's wicks on both sides here. There's wicks on both sides. And that's very common for regular candles, unless it opens like this and rallies up. Because it opened, went a little lower, then went higher. But when you go like this, where did the wicks go? Well, you see, if you look at, for example, I'm going to circle a candle, this one right here. Where's the wick? Why isn't there a wick down here? When I go to regular candles, there's no wick. That makes sense. Oh, there's a wick here. There's a wick here. That's a solid candle with a tiny wick on top. Let me pick one like this one right here. There's a wick down here. There's a wick down here. Well, let me pick this one right here. Why is there a wick down here, but when I go to Heiken, there's no wick? Because when you look here, where did it open? Where did it open? And to make life easy, I'm going to get rid of the 10 so you can see it, and the 20. So I want to point at where this opened, right there. And I want to point at, let me see if I can do this correctly, right there. That's where it opened, right there. Now, where's that little part of a wick right there? I'm going to go like this and draw a line right there. You guys see it? That's the bottom of the wick right there. So here's where it actually went lower. Here's where it opened. Now, when I go back to Heiken Ashi, watch what happens. Where'd the wick go? The wick is there. It's right here. But you see, it didn't trade down here. Watch when I get rid of it. See, it didn't trade below this line here. But Heiken Ashi says, hey, we have to open at yesterday's midpoint. We have to open at yesterday's midpoint, which is right there. That's the average. So what Heiken Ashi does is says, hey, I know you didn't trade down here, but I have to show what the average was. See that? So the average was right there on yesterday's price. So the wick is in there. It's in here. It's right here. You just can't see it because it did not trade in this area. It did not trade in this area right there. That is not the price of the stock during the day. You see that? It did not. It's just keeping the average going. This is the average price. This is the average price from the previous day, the average price from the previous day, the average price. It's averaging out. It's kind of like putting a one-day moving average on it right here. And as long as it's staying above that one-day moving average, it stays green. So think about it. Think about this real deeply. If there's no wick down here, there's a wick on this, there's a wick on this one, right? Think about that. There's no wick on these. There's a wick on the regular candles, but when you go to Heiken Ashi, if there's no wick, what does that mean? It's buried up in here. There's some air in here. There's some air in here. There's some air in here. The wick is buried. So what that means is it's probably like on this one, there's a little tiny wick where? Right here. In here somewhere, right? There's a little tiny wick right in here. Little tiny wick in here. So if you don't see a wick, what does that mean? The average of the open, the average, and it's green, is still going up. If there's no wick, it's bullish because it's averaging up. But what happens here? There's a wick. Oh, there's a huge change in the average. So really, an easy way, if you've never seen Heiken Ashi, is this. If there's a wick on top, it's pointing. The wick points to the trend. And the candle, by filling in this air, look how wide it gets. That's called an expanding candle. So when we get a doji, it's called candle number one. If it's red, it's -1. -1, -2, -1, -2. And this jumped right to a +3. This is a +1. So when you look at a candle, here's a perfect one. +1, because it's green in the first candle. Now, why do we call it the first candle? Because it's a doji. It expanded and went above. It's green. So it's day 2 of a green. And that's +2. Expansion, And then if it goes a little bigger, that's positive 3. There's no wick on the bottom, right? So when it expands like that, that's number 3. That's the highest. And we got a 3, we got a 3. Uh-oh, wick on the bottom, back to a 1. Negative 1. Done. So here's your payday cycle. 1, 2, 3, 2. Or 1 back here. So there's a wick on both sides. And done. So you can easily see this is the payday cycle right here. It's easier to see. So is it precise with the stock price? No. Does it show gaps? No. But everything else is positive about it because it stays green longer. It shows you expansion. It shows you momentum. It gives you a buy signal. Here's this would be a number 2, negative 1. Payday cycle, payday cycle, payday cycle, payday cycle. Did you guys hear about the news yesterday? They left the interest rates at 3.5 by 3.25. So the advanced decliners were pretty much on the New York Stock Exchange, favoring the decliners a little bit, even though the market was looking up at the start. So here's the market right here. We actually gapped up a little. See this? We gapped up on the market. But Heiken Ashey's saying, hey, it's not enough of an average. So what's strong today? Information technology and consumer discretionary. Two growth things are strong today. What's weak? Healthcare, consumer staples, communications, real estate, energy, and utilities. So real estate is what caught my attention because interest rate change. I don't see financial services as being a huge change. We'll go look at that. Because interest rate change. But Microsoft soared after earnings report. So I have an earnings folder here. And I'm going to hammer through these today if we have time. But Microsoft had earnings. So make sure you have your earnings button clicked on. Look at that huge Heiken Ashey candle. That's why you want to switch over and say, oh, there's your gap. It gapped over the 200 and stayed above it. That is a huge, huge boost of energy. That's like giving the software sector a couple of Red Bulls and a Celsius.